Thanks for joining us, everyone. My name is Jasper with Score Maine. I'm joined by Francis Keil of Modern Bookkeeping Solutions, or Modern Bookkeeping Services, sorry. And we're here today presenting, Francis presenting on bookkeeping for small businesses. A necessary part of your business is keeping your books, knowing where the cash is flowing. And we want to thank our partners, the Small Business Administration and Maine Technology Institute, for helping make today's workshop possible. And as I just said, if you don't already have a SCORE mentor, you can apply for one for free at score.org. And we look forward to seeing your questions as they arise. You can either utilize the raise hand function in the React window. We can have you come off of mute and speak, or you can queue them up in the chat and I'll read them out for you. Either way, Francis, why don't you take it away?
Okay, great. Thanks for joining us today. Let me pull up my presentation. Okay, there we go. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about simple bookkeeping for your business. And again, this is focused on small businesses particularly, but really simplifying bookkeeping with whatever method you're using. And my whole goal today is to help you feel more confident bookkeeping for your small business. So as we go throughout today, maybe take some notes on a few things that you can implement. Even if you just take one thing away from this presentation today, that's going to mean it was a successful day for me and for you. So keep some notes as we go. At the end, I'll leave some time for the Q&A, as Jasper mentioned. So really do put your questions in the chat or think of them so you're ready to go at the end. I love that portion. Okay, so I am Francis Keil. I'm the owner of Modern Bookkeeping Services. I also am a garden lover and I love to bake. So those are two of my side passions aside from bookkeeping. And I used to be a Spanish teacher. So that's a little bit about me and my background. So overview of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about why. Why bookkeeping? Why is bookkeeping important? All of that. We're going to talk about best practices and how you can simplify. We're going to talk about the bookkeeping tasks, what those actually are, and an overview of what needs to be done. And then setting yourself up for success. How can you do bookkeeping successfully for your small business? And then finally, we'll have that Q&A time that I mentioned. Okay, little disclaimer. So the information in this presentation is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as tax, legal, or financial advice in any way, shape, or form. Consult your pro for that. Okay, so let's get into why bookkeeping is important, because I think before we get into the details, it's important to realize why we even need to be doing this to begin with, okay? First off, it's legally required. You have to have financial documentation for your small business, so that's a pretty important one right off the bat. Super important for tax filing as well. So accuracy and organization make your tax filing process so much easier for you and your accountant or your tax pro. That's the biggest reason people want to have good bookkeeping, and it's a really good reason to have good bookkeeping, but there are other reasons as well. Okay. Proper categorization in your bookkeeping also helps you make sure that you get the appropriate tax return, which is really what you want. And then bookkeeping also provides information. I think this is probably the most overlooked benefit of bookkeeping is the information it provides. Okay. Good bookkeeping really allows you to understand your business better, to do better planning, and you can make better decisions. Okay. It can help you determine how much to pay yourself. That's a huge question that most people have when they first talk with me is like, how do I know how much to pay myself? Good bookkeeping can help you answer that question. It can help you curb expenses that have run wild or that maybe you have been willfully ignoring. You can see it really clearly and do something about it. You can also plan for slow periods in seasonality. Every main business that I see has some slow period or some seasonality. It's just how this state works. And good bookkeeping can help you determine exactly when that is, exactly how much slower you are in that period, and then therefore you can plan what to do about it so that the next time it rolls around, you know exactly how to handle the situation and you're totally prepared to move through it with ease. Okay, can also help you to hone in on your biggest revenue opportunities, right? So good bookkeeping can help you figure out where you should be focusing more of your energy, where maybe it's not working and you need to close out a revenue stream, how to do your pricing, all of that, right? Good bookkeeping gives you that information. Okay. Good bookkeeping is also necessary for getting business loans. Any bank or credit union, they're going to want to see good bookkeeping. They're going to want to know how much money your business is making, and not just you verbally saying it. They want to see the numbers and the documentation. And having good bookkeeping can help the loan process be a lot smoother. Finally, well, not finally, there's probably many more reasons why I could say bookkeeping is important, but finally for today's presentation, the sale of your business. So a lot of people don't think about this when they're starting out, but someday way down the line, or maybe in 5 years, you might want to sell your business, okay? If you have bookkeeping set up properly and it's accurate and up to date, it makes that process really smooth. A buyer can see exactly how the business is doing and how they might value it. If you don't have bookkeeping set up properly, they can't see that value, and so you're probably going to get a lot less than the business might actually be worth because you can't prove it. Okay? So that's why we're here today. And we will talk about goal. Okay, so when you're actually doing the bookkeeping, the goal that you want to be thinking about is you're trying to keep accurate financial records. You want to have easy, accurate, timely tax filing, getting that appropriate return that I was talking about, and then learn about your business's past financial performance. Okay, so as you're doing the bookkeeping, I think it's really important to keep these 3 items in mind so that you know what to focus on. Okay. Let me have a sip of water, and then we'll get into best practices. Okay. The biggest thing that you can do for yourself, best practice wise, is to keep your personal and business accounts separate. I'll get into this a little bit more later, but this is the #1 thing that is going to make your bookkeeping better and easier, okay? So keeping personal bank accounts, personal credit cards separate from business. Okay. In good bookkeeping, we are going to be tracking and categorizing expenses and income as well. We are maintaining supporting documentation. So that includes income, purchases, and expenses. It might be receipts, your invoices to customers, bills, check stubs, etc. Maintaining all those supporting documents, as well as bank statements, credit card statements, that sort of thing. You want to have internal controls in place. Okay, so this might not be as relevant if you are the owner operator also doing the bookkeeping, but as you scale, you want to make sure you have internal controls in place. For example, the person who's writing the checks to vendors probably shouldn't be the same person who's reconciling the accounts. If you have those be separate people, you have a little bit more internal controls in place, which is always a good thing. And then you want to reconcile your statements against your bookkeeping, right? Make sure that whatever is in your bookkeeping system, whatever that is, and we'll get into that in a little bit, matches what happened on the bank statement and that those balances actually match. Okay. And then I always recommend as a best practice to get an accountant or tax pro that you really understand, trust, and communicate well with. You want someone that you can ask questions to and get answers back that you understand. You want to make sure they're asking you good questions so that they have all that information. And that can really make a big difference in your whole process. Okay. So keeping it simple. There's a lot in bookkeeping, and we want to keep it as simple as possible so that you have the best chance of success. Okay. So again, we want accurate, timely bookkeeping. You don't want to overcomplicate it. It's better to have really simple, accurate, up-to-date bookkeeping than to track 10 different service types in minute ways, right? Better to just have one service bucket and really accurate, up-to-date bookkeeping than that high level of accuracy or complication, really. You want it to be repeatable. So you want to have steps that you can follow every single month. It really should be, once you get your system in place, you have a checklist of tasks you need to do each month, and we'll talk about what those are in a bit, that you can just check off. Okay, I did this, I did this, I did this, and it should be repeatable in exactly the same order. Manageable. So you also want to make sure that you know exactly what you need to do and you can incorporate it into the rest of your schedule. A lot of people have success with scheduling a specific time of day each week, specific day of the week with a specific time, that they just do bookkeeping so that they know exactly when they're going to do it. It's part of their regular schedule and they stay on top of it. But really, you want to have a clear scope of exactly what you need to do. So, the question you want to ask yourself, is this simple and is it repeatable? Okay. Again, first step in simplifying is ensuring that your business and personal accounts are separate and that those expenses and income are maintained separately as well. It makes things so much easier for you. I cannot say this enough times. And also, mixing of business and personal funds, which is called commingling, can open you up to liability if you're an LLC or a corporation. A lot of the reason that small businesses choose to have an LLC formed is for that legal protection. If you're commingling personal and business, that opens you up to more liability. So you really want to be careful about that. You want to use categories that are really simple, like the IRS categories are a great place to start, but you want to make sure you know exactly what they mean so that you're doing it accurately each time, okay? So for example, if you don't remember what owner's distribution is, you might retitle it to owner's draws or owner's pay and personal expenses. Both mean the same thing, but one might click with you more. Another example I use is auto fuel. A lot of bookkeeping systems default to auto fuel. That doesn't necessarily click with everyone. Some people think gas or vehicle gas, right? They mean the same thing, auto, fuel, and vehicle gas, but one might connect with you more. And so you should use that one, right? Have a name that you understand so you are clear, your brain clicks with it. It makes it so much easier. Okay. And then again, have systems and dedicated bookkeeping time in place. If you don't have a dedicated time to do your bookkeeping, chances are it's going to end up at the bottom of the list, and then it's going to be really, really overwhelming. Probably about this time of year when you're about to file your taxes and your accountant is asking for all your documentation, right? So doing it consistently and having a time that's set aside to do it is really going to be make it much simpler. Okay, so let's get into actually doing the bookkeeping, the fun part to me. Okay, so let's talk about bookkeeping tasks. Like, what do you even do when you're doing bookkeeping? Receiving payments, that's a big one. So matching your payments to your invoices and sales receipts, and then recording the bank deposits. It's kind of an important one. Entering and paying bills, organizing receipts, and we'll get into receipts a lot more later, I promise. And then entering and categorizing transactions, right? Entering income and expenses. A lot of that happens with receiving payments and bills and entering bills, but there's a little bit more that will happen with categorizing. And then reconciling your accounts to bank statements, making sure things match, tracking your assets and liabilities. Most super small businesses don't have any or very many assets and liabilities to track, but as you grow, chances are you're going to have equipment, loans, that sort of thing, and you do need to track those. And then preparing financial statements. Okay, so on the daily and weekly front, bookkeeping is going to look like accounts receivable, so sending invoices and sales receipts, receiving and matching payments from customers, making sure that you have received those payments, and then recording deposits. It's going to be accounts payable, so that's bills, entering bills, paying bills, making sure that all your bills have been paid, and then receipt management. That's really recording expenses and organizing and maintaining receipts. So these are the tasks that you want to do on a daily and weekly basis. It's going to depend a lot on how many transactions you have, how big your business is, but that's the sort of thing that you want to be thinking about on the daily, weekly scale. Okay. Transactions and categorization. So to me, this is the lifeblood of good bookkeeping. This is where you're going to spend majority of your time entering transactions. Most of that's done in those essential daily, weekly tasks, but there's always going to be a few other things that need to be entered. Have all the bills been entered? Have all sales been recorded? Have expenses been entered? Sometimes things on auto pay, right? You might have to enter those as well. Have any credit card and loan payments been entered? This is a big one you want to pay a lot of attention to is credit card and loan payments, and particularly with loans, what percentage is going towards interest payment and what percentage is going towards principal. And then have payroll and personnel costs been entered properly. We're also going to have some categorization. So categorization is essentially saying, what was this money earned from? Was it earned from the sale of a product? Was it earned from a service? That sort of thing. And what was the money spent on? Did the money go to rent? Did the money go to vehicle gas? Did it go to office supplies? That sort of thing. So that's what I mean when I say categorization. Okay. Accurate categorization is the most important part of bookkeeping. So it's worth diving into a little bit more, which we're going to do right now. So the chart of accounts has 5 main account types. And within those are sub-accounts, which people refer to as categories. So let's just go over the 5 main account types. So we have asset accounts. That's where you record things that the business owns. We have liability accounts. That's where you record things that the business owes. Equity accounts, that's the owner's equity, funds taken in and out of the business by the owner, loosely. And then revenue and expense accounts. So revenue is where you receive money from the business or for the business, and expenses are where you record money paid out by the business. Revenue and expense accounts are where you're going to spend the vast majority of your time categorizing. Okay, so we're going to get into the details of what these categories might look like. On the revenue side, we have categories. These are also known as sub-accounts, such as sales of product. Pretty straightforward. If you sell a product, that's a type of revenue for a product sale. Sales of services, sometimes this is just called services revenue or services. That would be, let's see, good example maybe would be a salon, right? So a salon might sell product. They would record that portion as a sale of product, and then they have a service. Maybe you're getting a haircut. That's a service. So we'd want to record what portion comes from the product and what portion comes from services. You might also record earned interest or interest earned. That's hopefully you have a high yield savings account for your business that is earning some interest. And so you can record that each month. And then there's always going to be some sort of miscellaneous income, refunds, that sort of thing. On the expense side, this is where you're arguably going to spend the most amount of time, is with expenses. There just tends to be a higher volume of expenses, and there's also more expense types to get into as well. So, for example, advertising, freight, office expenses, rent, utilities, salaries and wages, insurance, all of these are expense types. Probably going to have about 20 of these maybe. Again, depends really on the size and scope of your business. And again, you can customize these categories to work better for your brain. Like you might not think of advertising, you might think of marketing, right? From an accounting perspective, those are really the same things. So you could have advertising slash marketing or advertising and marketing, or you could just call it marketing. Freight, maybe your business doesn't deal with freight, but they have shipping and postage, right? So there's some little swaps you can make to customize for your business without adding a huge number, because you want to have as few categories as you can while also making sure that things are accurately organized. Okay, so let's talk about setting yourself up for success in doing all of this. First part of that is going to be choosing the right bookkeeping system. That is really important. Dealing with receipts, which is a huge issue for a lot of people. Setting up some processes that work for you, and then the time issue. Okay. So, biggest question I get from new businesses is what do I use for my bookkeeping? What system do I use? So let's talk about choosing the right system for your business. This is going to be the foundation of your bookkeeping. So you want to make sure it really works for you. You want to think about what functions do I need? What is your level of tech confidence? I think it's really important to be honest about what level of comfort you have with technology because you're going to be interacting with this system quite a bit. If it's something that you feel way over your skis on, you might want to dial it back and do something a little more basic. Okay. Is it scalable as you grow your business? If you plan to expand your business, you want to choose a system that can kind of grow with it, or that you have some plan. Maybe you need to transition your bookkeeping system a few years out, but you feel confident you can do that at that time. But think about, okay, what's the trajectory? Is this going to work with my business? Because sometimes people choose a system and then they get really busy and they outgrow it really quick, and it becomes untenable. So think about scaling as well. Okay, first option is that manual pen and paper, classic option. Have to put this in there, even though very few people are using that these days. Okay. It requires more maintenance, setup, and know-how. You really have to know what you're doing to get it set up. And it's probably the most time-consuming option. That said, it is really great for folks who don't want to use technology or don't have much tech confidence. Great for people who are patient. Great for people who have great organizational and paper management skills. Um, I know a lady that they've had many businesses over the years, and she still has some rental properties and another business. She does everything pen and paper by hand, super organized, has great paper management skills, and this system works so well for her. But you have to know yourself. And so if that's not going to be you, you might want to choose a different option. Okay. Second option is the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet is great for basic bookkeeping. I think it's a great place for a lot of small businesses to start. Yeah, ideal for businesses just starting out. You can use a spreadsheet for other things, but a spreadsheet works best if you're only tracking revenue and expenses in it. Beyond that, it gets really complicated to deal with, and you really have to know what you're doing. So spreadsheet is great if you just have revenue and expense accounts. Again, very difficult to track assets, liabilities, equity. So it's not great if you're starting out with a heavy equipment business, or even a landscaping business is sometimes hard if you have lots of vehicles, that sort of thing. So just something to be aware of there. With a spreadsheet, you're manually entering everything and manually categorizing, but it's going to do a little bit more for you automatically. So it can provide basic profit and loss statement information. It can automatically total things for you and gives you a little more automation and built-in organization. But again, every expense, every income line, you have to enter that manually. So a little bit more time consuming, but it's going to save you a lot more time over the paper version. Spreadsheet is really good for folks who are just starting out or maybe have been going for a few years and just have a really simple business model. Some businesses can be really high in revenue and have very simple business models. So if that's you, spreadsheet might be a fabulous option. It's good if you don't have any inventory to track or if you're tracking your inventory on a separate spreadsheet. But beyond that, it's not great. And you're comfortable with tech basics. You have to be comfortable using a spreadsheet in order to use this, but most people these days are comfortable with a spreadsheet. So I think it is a really good option for a lot of folks. Linked in this, and you'll get it with the recording and stuff, is a link to my basic bookkeeping worksheet, which has everything laid out by month and a tutorial there. And I also just created a yearly version for someone. So that is linked there as well. If you just have a really, really simple business, it's a great way to get things quickly organized. Okay. let's talk about accounting software. Accounting software, the real benefit is more things are done for you. Okay. Less manual entry, more things happening in an automated realm. Okay. Transactions are going to be imported automatically from your bank. Huge, huge time saving and huge error saving as well, because it's very easy to enter just one decimal place off and you're might not be able to reconcile your accounts. If things are being brought in automatically, less error. Easier reconciliation. You get really professional financial reports. Invoicing is usually included in all of these systems. You can send professional invoices right from your accounting software and it's all linked in. And then receipt management. Receipt management in some regard is included in most of these options, but it's not a guarantee. So, Wave accounting has become more popular in the past few years. There is a free version of Wave, which is great. That said, if you're going to go with Wave, I recommend the slightly paid version. I think it's $16 a month because that allows that bank connection to automatically bring in transactions. Otherwise, Wave essentially just acts like a online spreadsheet where you have to manually enter everything, but with invoicing built in. Okay, so I like the paid version if you're going to go for that. It's great for intermediate bookkeeping needs and businesses that need invoicing. I think that's their sweet spot right there. And they do have some receipt management option as well. QuickBooks Online, this is the most well-known accounting software in the US. Any tax pro you work with, any accountant, they're going to be very familiar with QuickBooks Online, which I think is an advantage of this option. There's also a lot of YouTube videos on there online that can help you. There's many service tiers and pricing. That said, it can get expensive depending on what you need, so something to be aware of with QuickBooks. Xero is another accounting software option. They're super well known in the UK and Canada, not so well known here. People are becoming more familiar with them, but it's still kind of on the fringe. But UK, Canada, New Zealand, they all use Xero pretty much entirely. Super similar features to QuickBooks Online, just a slightly different interface and process. They do have better receipt management. So if that's a priority for you, it might be worth looking into. But again, make sure your accountant or tax pro is familiar with it because I think that's the biggest barrier. And they do have slightly better pricing tiers than QuickBooks Online. So something to keep in mind as well. And good customer support. Quicken is another option. Quicken just launched a online business platform, but they also have a desktop business platform. Again, it's going to be more manual entry than most of these other options, but if you have a simple business, it can be a way to get just a little bit more automation than a spreadsheet and more professional reports than you could get with a spreadsheet, but at a cheaper price point. So those are some options. There's definitely more out there, but these are what I run into the most and what most people are using. Okay, receipt management. Okay, so you have some options for receipt management, and I think it's important to just choose a system and follow it. So you can go really old school, and that's just a shoebox of receipts, but hopefully it's not an actual shoebox of receipts. It's really helpful if you organize these in file folders by date. So you might have a file folder for each month, and then the collection of those are within an area that's by year. That's a system that I see works well if you want to go the old school route. That said, receipts, I don't know if you've noticed, but if you store a receipt for a few years, a lot of the ink tends to come off. And so your receipt might not be that helpful at that point. So that's why I kind of prefer some digital options. If you're going old school, I also think it's super helpful to take a pen and write at the top of the receipt what it was for, because sometimes the printed line items might not be obvious. Okay. So just kind of notes on receipts are helpful but not necessary. Second option is scan and store. I think this is a fabulous option that probably fits for most people. Okay, so as the receipts come in, you're going to scan them. Hopefully you're doing this like weekly or monthly. You could do it exactly as they come in, but I think often that can be a distraction from other more important things you need to be doing in your business. So it's great if you have one place, you put all the receipts that need to be processed, and then once a week or once a month, you have a time on your calendar and you go through and you scan all of those. Okay. Really good to have these either uploaded to some sort of cloud storage or backup, or to have them on your computer with a physical backup as well. You kind of want to have two options there with digital. And then within that, again, you're going to want them organized. You don't just want to have this huge folder of 20 years of scanned receipts. That's going to be chaos. And so it's really helpful to have folders that are organized by bank account or credit card, and then like 2024, and then a folder within that that's January. That's the best system that I see. So you can also have receipt management incorporated into your accounting software. So that would be true for QBO, Xero, Wave has an option for that. And so essentially in your phone, there's an app for that software, and you can scan the receipt and it uploads to your accounting software and can actually be matched to that expense or bill, which makes it really clear what each thing was for. A lot of people are moving in this direction. So I think it's really mostly an option between scan and store or incorporate it into accounting software. That said, I did have to add in here that QuickBooks Receipts has gotten a bit clunkier recently. But as of yesterday, that might have changed a little bit. They do a lot of upgrades. So as they change things, sometimes it gets clunkier and then it gets easier. So you have to be able to go with the flow of that. You can also have a receipt management only software. So like HubDoc and Dext are examples of this. These are totally independent receipt management softwares. And if you have a high volume of receipts, this might be a good choice. It's another thing you have to pay for, which is a little bit of annoying, but they do all of this so much better than the other options. Okay. Let's get into processes. So one process that I really like that makes a lot of entry of paper easier is left to right. You can also do the same thing right to left, it doesn't matter. I use this same principle with baking, and I think maybe baking is an easier example to give. So when I am about to make a recipe, I have my bowl in front of me, I have my recipe down, and I get out all my ingredients. I put all my ingredients on my left side. As I put them in the bowl, measure them, they go to my right. Essentially, once they're processed, they're on the right. Same thing works great with paper. So if you have papers that need to be entered into your bookkeeping system or scanned and stored, whatever papers, put them all in one pile, have a nice little catch-all area for them. You could have it on your left or your right, but I put it on my left. Once I've dealt with that paper, entered it, organized it wherever it needs to go, then I'm putting it on my right, and that's going to get dealt with either if it needs to be shredded, it'll be shredded, recycled, or stored physically. Okay. I think it's a really simple method to keep yourself organized and make sure things get processed. Okay. I think I said all of this. Repeatable. So you want to have repeatable processes. Again, create a standard monthly bookkeeping checklist for yourself of the tasks you need to do and the order they need to be done in. This will help you keep on track. It also means that when you sit down to your bookkeeping, you will avoid that sense of overwhelm. A lot of people feel really overwhelmed when they go to do their bookkeeping. Totally, totally normal. If you have a checklist to work off of, you can just go task by task by task, and you know you're doing what you actually need to do. Okay, so you can go through this presentation again and look at those weekly, daily bookkeeping tasks and lay them out for yourself. Add any other tasks in that you might know you need to do. And then you have a checklist to work off of. Makes it much more approachable and repeatable. Okay. You won't skip steps. That's another benefit. And then folders. So whatever your folder system is, every business is going to need some sort of folder system for something. Okay. This might be physical, this might be digital, but this is how I like to have my folders organized. So for bank statements, for example, you might have a big folder that has checking statements. I like to put the last 4 digits of the checking account on there just so that I know exactly which account it's for. And then within that folder, you're going to have subfolders by year. Okay. So 2024, and then within the 2024 folder, you're going to have statements organized by month. I like to have the naming convention be the same with month, day, year, and then the account name, but you could have it however you want. So within the 2024 folder, I would have all those checking statements organized, and then I'd start my 2025 folder and have those checking statements organized. And then for the savings account, I would have a savings account and all the folders by year. And then within each year folder, you're going to have the separate statements. So that's kind of how I organize it for bank statements, particularly credit card statements for sure. But you could do the same thing, whether it be for customers or for receipts, pretty much the same principle. I think this is the most effective for most people. So just something to keep in mind, whether it's physical or digital. Okay, dedicated bookkeeping time. So again, schedule a time in your calendar each week or month where you know you're going to do your bookkeeping and take care of things. I really recommend you limit this to 1 hour at a time, 1 hour blocks. Otherwise, it's really easy to get burnt out on bookkeeping if it's not something you're used to doing. Okay. So cut yourself off at 1 hour when you start, set a timer for 1 hour so that you know you stop at that point. Okay. Keep consistent. So whatever you're going to do, whether it's Tuesday mornings, I do my bookkeeping every Tuesday morning from 9 to 10, do your bookkeeping and do it consistently. You have the highest chance of success that way. Okay. If you have a really small business, you probably don't need to be doing your bookkeeping weekly. Okay. But you definitely need to be doing it monthly. If you're going to do it monthly, I really recommend that you do it the first week of the following month. So for example, we are almost in April. You would do your bookkeeping for March, the first week of April. And again, I recommend you do it on a consistent day at a consistent time. If you're only doing it monthly, you might need to set aside 2 hours in the first week of the month in 1 hour blocks to do it. Okay, and again, just keep it with small chunks, keep that checklist there, know what you have to do, and make it enjoyable. Most important part, if you are not into your bookkeeping yet, make sure that you have some nice music going when you're doing your bookkeeping. Make sure you have your favorite beverage there. Do it at a time of day that you know you're going to be productive and successful, and have it be a time when no one's interrupting you and it's your sacred bookkeeping special time. Okay. Make it enjoyable for yourself, whatever that means. And then remember the goal, right? Why are we doing this to begin with? Why is my bookkeeping important? You want to keep accurate financial records. You want to have that easy, accurate, timely tax filing and that appropriate return. When your bookkeeping is under control, that is the best feeling, to give that to your accountant and they're like, oh, you got this to me by February 15th. You're the best. Let me get your tax return. Oh, perfect. You get the great tax return. That's what you want, right? That's what you're shooting for, is that easeful process. And then you can also learn about your business's past financial performance and make better decisions, right? So once you've actually done the bookkeeping work, make sure you're looking back at your financial statements to see, oh, wow, February is a really slow month for me. Here's how much cash I need saved by November, because November is really a good month. Up until November is really good months for me, so that I can cash flow through February, right? Look at those records to get the information, because that is such a value to you and your business. You might as well use it if you've done the bookkeeping. Okay. Thank you. That's all for me. Again, linked in here will be that basic bookkeeping worksheet and my website as well. Let's get into the Q&A questions. I think there's a lot in the chat, which I'm excited for.
Yeah, there's been some rolling in. We had one, first one come in from Tina or Tina Lou. What would you say the best way to post a to your bookkeeping house flip would be? Purchase expenses, sale of stuff like that.
So it's a flip property?
That's what I'm gleaning from the chat
Okay.
message. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Um, with a flip, since it's a short-term situation, you could probably get away with a spreadsheet. Again, I would still recommend, like commonly with flips, people use their personal and business accounts together. If you can have a separate business account or bank account for the flip, that's going to make all the tracking easier. But you probably could use a spreadsheet in that case to track your revenue and expenses. You're probably going to need a little bit of help from your accountant anyways with some sale and depreciation stuff. But they can usually take care of that pretty easily.
Nice. Tina's also wondering about some receipt management questions. I know you did cover scanning and storing your stuff.
Yep.
I believe more directly, does the IRS accept digital receipts?
I believe, from my understanding, they will. But worst case scenario, even if they didn't, you could print them all. But I don't think
Mm,
the IRS is moving towards doing most things digitally anyways. So they're going to expect most things digital.
yeah. Kathy's wondering if you're taking on new clients.
Very minimally.
Um, Tina, again, it's another question from Tina, wondering what if you have any recommendations for scanners to use. I
Oh,
myself, I like my Epson that I have. But
this is a good question. If you're going to scan a huge volume of receipts, you might want to get a scanner. I forget what they're called, but you can like load up a bunch of papers and it
mm,
just goes through all of them and puts them in separate documents. That's definitely the best way to deal with it if you have like years of receipts you're dealing with. Um, I personally use Adobe Scan on my phone. I actually think
mm,
it's better than my actual scanner. But
mm,
that's really, I'm only doing like one-off receipts. I'm not doing huge batches. That would not be as good if you're doing a big batch. If you're doing a big
mm.
batch, you definitely want something that can read through them real quick.
Yeah, I can vouch for Adobe Scan on your phone as well. I believe you can do a certain amount of scans for completely free as well, so you don't need to pay Adobe's egregious subscription fee to use that
Yeah,
one.
I've never paid.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Karen Burrows, wondering if do I need to keep hard copies of customers' checks?
Hard copies of customers' checks. Um, one thing I would check, and I will say most accountants will probably have totally different answers on this, so I'll just say my personal opinion. If your bank shows check images, a lot of banks have check images, or you can get check images from the bank. Um, you probably don't need to store those. Some banks, however, do not store any deposit images, so I would at least recommend keeping those on hand for at least a year or so because you might have an issue with a customer and need to reference that check and you won't be able to get it through the bank. So that's my personal opinion.
Hmm. Would a scan work in that case, just in case?
Yes, a scan would totally work if you didn't want to have the actual physical check. Yeah.
Gotcha. Tracy says, I am working on my business plan. What can we expect to pay for bookkeeping for a small retail business? Also, any advice on finding a bookkeeper who's a good fit?
I always recommend interviewing a few bookkeepers. Find someone that you communicate well with. It's just like finding an accountant, but your bookkeeper you're going to be in touch with more. Really depends on how big your retail business ends up getting, but you're
Hmm.
probably going to be starting at least at 150 a month for monthly bookkeeping. And then it's kind of going to go up there based on how complex your situation is. So that's kind of where I would expect to start.
Nice. Uh, Gregory, back to scans. Greg recommends the Cam Scan app as well. Similar to Adobe, you can email it to yourself as a PDF.
Thanks, Greg.
Um, Karen says accounting software and importing software. How does this work would you say, for an electrical contracting business with a receipt from material supply house that includes items for more than one customer?
Oh, great question. So that depends on if you're doing job costing for your business and are trying to break everything out by customer in your accounting system. If you're doing it yourself, I would probably not go that route, to be honest, and would just take the warehouse total receipt and you're going to put that in. Later on, as your business and bookkeeping gets more complex, you might want to break out everything by customer, but you can do that. And it's pretty easy to split things in QuickBooks. So it's not that big of a deal, but it definitely is more work. And then you have to tie every single receipt and every single income piece to a specific customer, which can be a lot of management time.
Cool. Honorine says, what happens when you haven't been keeping receipts but been relying on bank transactions?
That's extremely normal. First of all, extremely common, I should say. You do want to keep receipts. That's the best case scenario. Definitely try and keep receipts for anything over $50. And the best time to start, if you haven't been doing it, is to start now. A lot of receipts you could go back and get retroactively if you needed, but it's better not to have to go through that laborious process. So the best time to start is now and find a system that's going to work for you. But again, it's very common for people to just go off of bank transactions these days.
Hmm. Yeah. Greg Weissner again on the with another recommendation as far as check backups, a carbon checkbook, pretty old school there, where it kind of copies to the back. I use one
Yep.
of those daily for Score for depositing checks. So
Yep.
they're still around. They still work great, I find.
Yep.
And then Tina's back. Tina did lose internet connection and was wondering if you could quickly go back over the flip house question again.
Oh, flip
Um,
house question. Yeah,
yeah.
again, I would recommend you have a separate bank account for your flip project to run all income and expenses through. That's just going to make it so much easier for you to track. For a flip project, because it's relatively short time horizon, as long as you're going to sell it at the end, you could probably get away with tracking in a spreadsheet or a very basic system. But your accountant is probably going to have to help you with some depreciation and purchase and sale stuff anyways, so they can kind of help you with those more complicated parts.
And then Tina's also wondering, when you hire an online bookkeeper, how would you get them things like receipts and bills?
Yeah, everything can be done digitally. Most of my clients, for example, store their own receipts or upload them through their accounting software. Um, and so there's some documents that need to be uploaded, but everything's pretty much easily done these days. A lot of people receive things digitally anyways. So I really haven't run into any issues. Very few things need to be exchanged physically in person.
Nice. All right. And that we got one more question coming in as I was about to start. Anyway,
Nice.
Tracy is wondering, how long should we keep business bank statements and receipts? I recently cleaned out my dad's house and he had some from the 80s.
I love that. You don't need to keep them that long. 7 years, really, is how
Hmm.
far you want to go back. Some people keep 10 just to be safe, but 7 years. Um, and beyond that, you can shred all of those and feel great about it. Don't keep them, don't keep them 30 years.
Yeah, that's quite a time frame there, huh?
Probably most of them are illegible anyways with the ink. Yeah.
Hmm.
Ink and water
Yeah.
damage are the two biggest things with receipts that are stored physically, so just something to be aware of.
Hmm. Yeah, something we run into here. We get our mailbox is not particularly waterproof, so if we some things we receive in the mail end up a little soggy. But thankfully, we're able to haven't had a problem with it yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, lots of people saying thanks in the chat. Anyone else have any questions while we're still online here today? Well, in the meantime, as you guys queue them up, if there are any, I want to thank everyone for attending today. I want to thank Francis for putting on another great presentation on an invaluable topic. if you don't bookkeep properly, you can get into a lot of trouble. And we this workshops, I would say, is one of our most valued ones in my opinion. In any case, like I said earlier, we will be sending the recording and slides out to everyone once we wrap up here today. You should receive this, I would say, if not today, tomorrow. There's also a short survey attached to the message I'll be sending out. We really value you and appreciate your feedback on there. And one more quick reminder, ScoreMain offers free, confidential one-on-one mentoring, whether you're starting or growing your business. It's easy to request a meeting with a mentor by visiting score.org and filling out our brief form by entering your zip code. And SCORE is a nonprofit partner of the SBA with 240 chapters around the country, three of them right here in Maine. And SCORE has helped over 11 million entrepreneurs since 1964. And as of recently, we got our number. We helped start over 560 businesses in the state of Maine alone last year. So it's a pretty. We're here to help, and we're glad to be doing it.
Thanks so much to everyone who attended today. It's wonderful to talk about bookkeeping with you. So have a great one, and maybe we'll see you around.
Yeah, we appreciate you, Francis. Thanks again for putting on today's presentation, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Bye.